Hey, how are you? I'm SliceofOtaku, and in the world of Avatar, the elements of water, earth, fire, and air are, for the most part, rather self-explanatory. Waterbenders harness the power of water, earthbenders bear the might of earth, firebenders the intensity of fire, and airbenders the force of air. Of course, they each possess their own associated stipulations and exceptions, but for the most part, if you're aware of the fundamentals, everything else comes pretty easily. And that's because the world's power system was designed with simplicity in mind. Something like the bending of muddy water may be on the more complicated side of the spectrum, but should such a thing be manipulated by the likes of Katara and Toph, a waterbender and earthbender respectively, a rational viewer probably wouldn't find any fault in this, as it doesn't outright conflict with any pre-established rules of the world. And it's the same brand of logic that may be applied to just about every subfacet of bending. In the case of bloodbending, close to 90% of blood is made up of water. Now, manipulating such a thing despite its impurities with precision is an art similar to that of metal bending, as one must be able to recognize and utilize the small remnants of earth within various metals. The same may be said for plant bending, and so on and so forth. Now, with all of this in mind, I find it rather interesting just how confusing and/or decisive the subject of lava bending stands to be. And so with this video, hopefully, we can settle the debates and answer your burning questions by explaining the art of lava bending. Formerly focused upon in Book 3 of The Legend of Korra, lava bending stands to be yet another subfacet of earthbending. Despite this, lava bending actually owes its proper origins to Avatar: The Last Airbender, wherein, although not explicitly stated, was very much framed to be an Avatar exclusive capability. The firebending avatar who predated Avatar Yang Chen may be seen forcing 4 volcanoes to simultaneously erupt. Avatar Kyoshi propelled lava upwards during her severance of Kyoshi Island from the rest of the continent. And in the case of Avatar Roku, we actually have 2 occurrences. The first being less commonly known than the other, as in an attempt to master the Avatar state by means of harnessing the spiritual might of the sun during the winter solstice, Avatar Roku overwhelmed himself with spiritual might. At this time, he was incapable of leaving the Avatar state and/or controlling its power, causing him to inadvertently spur on the eruption of Crescent Island's volcano. The following instance, of course, being his elderly attempt at quelling the destruction caused by the 2 erupting volcanoes on his island, which ultimately resulted in his demise. Now, in evaluating these various instances, besides them all being avatars, there are 2 constants for us to keep in mind. The first being that each time this is done, said avatars have entered the avatar state to do so. Secondly, in each of these lava bending cases, the manipulated lava was pre-existing, which is to say that the sort of lava bending granted by the avatar state is inherently different from the cases of lava bending possessed by the likes of Gazan and Bolin, which in of itself is where I believe a lot of fan confusion inherently stems from. The later depiction of this ability sees users produce lava from typical Earth. And so, for the sake of clarity, I'd go as far as to denote the version of the ability presented by The Legend of Korra to be true lava bending. And according to various testimonials, including that of arguably the greatest earthbender of all time who none of us dare to argue, Toph Beifong, the art of true lava bending is a rare one indeed. Now, to fully understand why this may be, I'd like us to turn to the origins of bending in its entirety. Now, as far back as we know, humanity's usage of the elements began with the bestowal of such energy by means of lion turtles as to better equip them for the perils of the wilderness. And at this time, such possession was both momentary and primitive. So much so that we'd be remiss to consider such people benders at all, as terms such as user or possessor would be far more appropriate. But yeah, these people belong to societies atop lion turtles completely oblivious to one another prior to the advent of the first avatar. And with that, a precedent was set for territories based on geolocation. And so when the lion turtles left humanity and imparted the powers of the elements onto them, a degree of isolation would subsequently follow. And as time progressed, people would go from being simple users to prolific benders by mirroring the world around them. And with the exception of waterbenders studying the primordial spiritual force of the moon, all other disciplines of bending were learned by emulating the practices of particular animals. Now, the world of Avatar is a fantastical one in the sense that bizarre animal hybrids are the norm. Meanwhile, something like a simple bear is both bizarre and prized by a king of the Earth Kingdom. However, even in this world where giant sharks can swim through sand, as far as we've been made privy to, there exists no organisms capable of withstanding the environment of a volcano. Which is to say that by going by what is essentially the standard, no source of tutelage was to be found in this field. As things currently stand, similarly to the position of the world during The Last Airbender, there is virtually no basis for the existence of true lava bending. But it would seem that with the end of the 100-Year War, this would change forever, with the establishment of Republic City, a bustling metropolis founded by Firelord Zuko and Avatar Aang that both migrants and descendants from all 4 nations consider home. And as far as we know in regards to the history of the Avatar world, disregarding the nomadic practices of the late airbenders or war-based occupation, this is the most interconnected the denizens of the 4 nations have ever been. It is here that a level of cultural diffusion beyond the likes of which the world has ever seen is continually facilitated. And with that, you have a mixture of cultures and bloodlines that otherwise wouldn't be the case. When it comes to Bolin, we may equate his lava-bending disposition to his existence as an earthbender born to an earthbender as well as a firebender, which is to say that the ability to lava bend is inherently a hereditary earthbending rarity, which requires a degree of both Earth Kingdom and Fire Nation descendants. Although, if it were just that simple, during the age of Korra 170 AG and beyond, lava bending probably wouldn't be considered a rarity, so allow me to further elaborate. Firstly, let us remind ourselves that the art of bending as we know it is essentially the application of elemental martial arts and the like. Now, because elemental aptitude exists as a hereditary trait, the bestowal of bending associated teachings and or traits over time may become ingrained in a bender's very being and in a sense continue to ferment over the course of generations. It's sort of like the long version of the Avatar Spirit's stockpiling of power and knowledge that we've spoken about in a previous video. The reason you may be able to teach someone how to metal bend as opposed to doing so in the case of lava bending is because the biological prerequisite for metal bending has been within earthbenders for generations, making its acquisition more so linked to general bending proficiency and or accuracy. Whereas the biological components necessary for lava bending have not been passed down long enough for much beyond the occasional exception. Now, I'm sure some of you may feel like all of this came out of left field and it's just another one of those poorly thought out Korra additions, but I beg to differ on account of what we know of waterbending. I find that the process of lava bending is rather similar to the process of phase shifting that waterbenders possess. And I say this because they're able to manipulate water in their liquid, solid, and or gaseous states, just as a lava bender may be able to alter typical Earth. And by that logic, metal bending would be akin to plant bending, the manipulation of water within foliage. And if we are to once again look at the origins of humanity's relationship with the elements, it is made abundantly clear that the ancestors of waterbending kin lived atop a massive lion turtle over a large body of water. And not only is there no ice around, but their city had no shortage of foliage. And so when they eventually migrated from this place to the northern and southern poles, it would seem that they subsequently learned phase shifting as a part of their adaptation to the climate, leading it to become such a fundamental aspect of their genetics that even a waterbender of no formal training, such as Katara at the very beginning of the series, could unintentionally do so. However, when it came to the removal of water from plants, as someone who didn't grow up around any sort of plant life, it was something that she had to actively learn. But if we look to the Foggy Swamp tribe, however, plant bending comes inherently to them. But once again, the common ancestors of all waterbenders were profusely surrounded by plants. And so despite northern and southern waterbenders being so far removed from their swamp-dwelling cousins, the capacity and capability for such a thing never left. And now, if you're wondering why Mako, someone with the same parents as Bolin, can't lava bend as well, he's a firebender. I mean, to break things down any further than that would be unbecoming of me. They're not the same base element, so of course they wouldn't share a sub-element. And even if the inclusion of earthbending genetics could manifest in another way, who's to say that he'd even be a 1 in a million oddity like Bolin? Now, of course, I'd love to discuss Ghazan more with this video, as he was in fact our first example of true lava bending in the series, but honestly, the members of the Red Lotus are so mysterious that to attempt any breakdowns in his case specifically would be a bit too contrived for my taste. Lava bending is easily one of, if not the most destructive bending discipline in the Avatar world. I mean, all it took was one proficient lava bender to topple the once impenetrable walls of Ba Sing Se. In the past, we have thoroughly established bloodbending to be the most devastating practice in terms of single target focus. But when it comes to area of effect damage, lava bending is catastrophically dangerous, and so the mere thought of such an ability rising to prominence over time and potentially becoming as commonplace as the bending of metal or even ice is enough to shake me to my core. Forget the threat of bloodbending, this is world-breaking, and good luck nerfing something like that. It's pretty unclear how long it would truly take for such a trait to become a normal thing, but I'd imagine it wouldn't be for several centuries at least, so there's that, I suppose. Let me know what you guys think about lava bending now that it's been thoroughly broken down for you, and whether or not you prefer true lava bending or the legacy lava bending possessed by the Avatar. Covering this series has easily been one of the best decisions I have ever made with this channel, so to be back making them for you all after being terminated under false pretenses and dealing with the loss of my grandpa prior to that is a feeling that's kinda hard to describe, but it's certainly a positive one. With the exception of a quick update video at the very beginning of the year, funny enough, 9 months in, this is our first video of 2020. And on that note, if you're still watching, thank you so much for appreciating what I do. When the channel disappeared, it felt like a part of me did too. It was as if all the time we shared over the years just disappeared like that. But really and truly, what helped me persevere and keep going was the support you all showed me over on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. Thank you all so very much for screaming to the heavens on my behalf. I can't even begin to properly thank you all, but I will certainly try my best by bringing you the best content that I can muster, both here, on Plot Armor, and everywhere else. So many of you have asked for this one, so hopefully you enjoyed it, and if there's anything else Avatar related or otherwise you'd like to see from me, let me know that too. But with that, thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.